My process for making 6mm flags is very similar to what you could do for much larger figures. It's maybe a little bit more fiddly, but there's no particular dark art involved to achieve good looking flags on much smaller bases. For my Wars of the Roses project, I've sourced most of my flags from the excellent Lance and Longbow Society books, but also several other textbooks that I've managed to find. Sourcing the correct flags is a subject entirely on its own, so I'm going to assume that you've found reasonable quality scans of the flags that you require. In my case, I took high resolution photographs, trimmed them, resized them, and in a handful of cases adjusted them so that they were exactly square. I then imported the picture file into Google Slides, but you could use Microsoft Presentations or something similar. This is where I adjust the size of the JPEG so that all the flags are about the same size, in my case for the banners 1 cm square. And you can adjust the size of your flags to make them as big or as little as you need. I usually try to put a lot of flags on one page to save both on paper and on ink, and then I cut out the flags that I require at any one time. Then I gather together all of the resources I need to start assembling my flags. This includes dressmaking pins for the flagpoles, a sponge or foam block that I can stick the pins into, a paintbrush, scissors, PVA glue, varnish, and of course paint. I also need some small files and a drill. Once I've gathered all my materials, I'm ready to begin. Step 1 is to prepare the pins. The paint does not adhere very well to the chrome surface, so they need to be roughened up a little bit using a small file. You can usually do half a dozen pins at a time relatively quickly. Now you can paint the pins using your regular acrylic paint. Make sure it's dried thoroughly and hardened before you move on to the next stage. Once the paint is dried, you need to seal it with a coat of varnish. I use a simple brush on matte varnish, but whatever varnish you use will probably do just as well. Next I cut the flags from my pre-prepared sheet. You could do this with a very sharp blade on a cutting mat, but actually I find a good quality set of scissors does the job just as well and just as accurately. I then pre-fold all of the flags ready for placing onto the pins. Now apply a thin layer of good quality PVA or wood glue to one side of the flag. Place the top of the pin in the crease of the flag and then squeeze shut gently with your fingers. At this stage the PVA provides enough slipperiness that you can adjust where the paper hasn't quite been folded accurately so that both sides match up, and once they are matched up, squeeze gently with your fingers so that the flag adheres all the way to the flagpole itself. After a few seconds the PVA is soaked into the paper and the two sides are no longer quite so slippery, so you can now fold the flag without distorting the sides. Gently fold a few ripples into the flag as if it's rippling in the breeze. Bigger flags need more ripples. Stick the pinned flag into a foam block and allow to dry. Do not touch again until it is fully dry. Some of the standards and guidons have a V-shaped tail on the end, and this is best done after the flag is fully dried, and you can just use a simple pair of scissors to snip out that V. Now you can eliminate the white paper edges on the flags. This needs to be done very carefully. I find a similar or matching colour of acrylic paint, water it down slightly and apply a small amount using a small brush rubbed along the corresponding coloured edge. More complex flags may require different colours applied in different areas, but don't worry too much at this stage if your colour is slightly different to that on the flags, because really at this scale you just don't see it. This is also a good time to touch up any silver showing on the flagpoles. Once everything has been allowed to dry thoroughly, you need to varnish the flags. Now some varnishes may dissolve the ink depending on the type of printer you have. I find using a spray-on varnish like that made by Winsor & Newton applies really well without ruining the flag. You may have to experiment with this. Allow to dry thoroughly before moving on to the next step. Depending on your personal aesthetic, you may also wish to go over the flags with a matte varnish. This can be brushed on if you've previously varnished the flag without damaging the print. Again, allow to dry thoroughly before moving on to fixing the flags to the bases. Now you're ready to put the flagpole onto the base. You could do it so that the flagpole is next to a figure so it looks like it's being held, but in my case I decided I just wanted it roughly in the centre of the base. Now you can do this stage with a hand drill, but I find that using a Dremel is quicker and a lot easier, and to my mind a little bit more precise. And again, I prepare all of the bases, drilling all the holes before attempting to fix any of the flagpoles into position. We're now at the last stage. Using a brush, I apply a small amount of PVA to the hole to ensure to get some inside the hole itself, and then apply a small dab of paint to the bottom of the flagpole and insert it in the hole, making sure that the flag is standing upright and straight. If the hole is the right size, the flag shouldn't move too much anyway. Step back and leave it to dry. I use a good quality wood glue for this stage because the stuff dries like concrete and the flags just aren't going to come off the bases after that. And that's it, that's how I've done the flags for my Wars of the Roses project. Backers do make figures that carry flagpoles that I could have applied the flags to, but I just feel that the flagpoles were too flexible and would just break off. Using dressmakers' pins as flagpoles meant I could put a flagpole on every single base, and gluing them firmly in place with wood glue means I can pick up the base using the flagpole without having to actually touch the rest of the base and risk damaging the delicate figures themselves. So there you go, that's my method. I hope you found it interesting, and as always I'd love to hear from you in the comments below whether you think I've done it right or wrong.